Hello, good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Rajiv.
Morning,
Good morning,
Ravi.
Andrew.
Good morning. Hi, Ravi. Hi, Rajiv. How are you?
All good, Andrew. Good to see you back.
Good. You
Hi,
too.
Ali.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Hi, Rajiv. Hi, Andrew. So, hi, everyone. Welcome to today's session. Thank you so much for joining us. It's such a pleasure to see so many people registering and attending the session today. So, as you know, we have a few wonderful people here who are going to help us kind of understand the current challenges that are happening with L&D and specifically with talent, so the war for talent. We're going to start with a welcome message by the Vice President of Disprz in the Middle East and North Africa, Mr. Ravi Kesavan. And after that, we can move forward to the next speakers. And Ravi, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Ali. Thanks a lot. So, good morning, everyone. On behalf of Disperse, I would like to thank you all for downloading our ebook and joining the session today for this exclusive webinar and workshop on War for Talent. So, just to give you a background about this ebook brings the voices and insights from global HR and L&D leaders across the globe. And today we have a panel of experts and global leaders who are going to share their perspective on the same particular topic, their views and insights related to Middle East perspective. So I would also like to take this opportunity to welcome Andrew Walter, who is the Corporate Director for L&D and Talent Development in Rotana. So he comes with about decade experience, over a decade year of experience working with reputed brands like Jumeirah, Etihad Airways. And I would also like to welcome Rajiv Raghavan, who is the Group L&D Manager for Rivoli. And he is also a certified professional in talent development. He comes with huge experience of working with reputed retail companies like Landmark, Godrej. And we also have Sunita Arora, who is our internal Disperse L&D advisor and a strategist. She comes with multinational experience of working with reputed organizations like GE Digital in India as well as in US. In terms of context, so how this workshop is going to be set up. So we'll start with a quick synopsis of the ebook, including the key takeaways and insights related to this today's topic of discussion, War of Talent. Then there will be a group discussion led by our guest speakers, and that session will be moderated by my colleague Ali Sultan. And then at the end, we'll also do a final summary of the discussion of the points that we have gone through during our workshop today. So without any further ado, let me invite Sunita Arora to take the floor and take us through the workshop and give us a summary of the ebook. Over to you, Sunita.
Yeah, Ravi, thank you so much. I'm happy to present. And can I request Garima or you, if you could, one of you could share your screen with the PowerPoint. Would that be possible, Garima?
Yes.
Okay, thanks so much. So while Garima is pulling out the slides, I want to give a quick context on what this ebook is about. For those of you who've downloaded it, thank you. That's very gratifying, very fulfilling because we put in a lot of hard work in getting this together. So our objective was to really get a pulse of what is the L&D fraternity feeling. What are our learning leaders thinking? What are the challenges that they're facing? And for precisely this reason, we set out on this mission to understand the challenges. So at Disperse, we collaborated with the ETHR World. And what we started with was a dipstick, a pulse survey, and we reached to about 60 plus organizations and got their inputs. And this was from CHROs, learning leaders, and this was done across 3 geographies. It was done in Middle East, it was done in India and Southeast Asia. So if you could move forward, Garima, I can shine some light on this slide. So this is precisely what I just summed up. We'd gone in 3 geographies and got some great insights. Now, let me come to what is it that we got? What were the key findings from the survey? So as you can see, the top challenges that the learning and development fraternity faces, according to the CHROs and learning leaders we got inputs from, they were these top 4. You can see on the left-hand side, it says reinventing the learning and development team with skills to drive business value. So is the L&D team equipped to meet the fast pace of the changing business? Can it really support the business to meet its goals? And we also found out that, there was a huge focus on minimizing the impact of great resignation and preparing for the great attraction. So I know that, we've been hearing news from different parts of the world about layoffs, etc. But let me tell you that according to some recent research as well, it's not like the job market has slowed in all of the sectors. So this point that, of minimizing impact of great resignation and preparing for attracting candidates is pretty much relevant in a lot of sectors. Like retail has been on fire, if you talk about India and some other geographies too. Now, let me talk about bridging the widening skills gap. You can see that there was a focus on that as well. What are the skills required for one to do their job today as well as of the future? Then addressing the skilling needs of a distributed workforce, a very, very important point. And all of us agree that, COVID has transformed the way we work, right? Now, this has become a cliched line. Now, with this, we also found out that, has there been enough to address the needs of this new way of working? So these were the top findings, and let's move forward. So region-wise, very quickly, let me give you a snapshot of what each region's top challenge was. So India, minimizing impact of great resignation. Southeast Asia, selecting the right content amidst overload. So you see that there's so much that one can learn. A learner can learn from so many sources. In the Southeast Asian region, this was highlighted as the topmost reason, the challenge. Then Middle East, bridging the widening skills gap. Okay, let's move forward and dive into our next slide. So you see the panel of experts that we had reached out to. We had a great time interviewing them. They were very knowledgeable, experts in their fields. And, as and when we move along the presentation, I'll keep giving you snippets from what we learned from each leader and really enjoyed their insights. Now, very quickly, I'll walk you through 5 sections because these are the findings that came out from the interviews we had from that panel. So we had taken the challenges that we found from the survey to that panel. And then what all they said, we collated all of that into this ebook for your reference. And I'm going to walk you through that, right? So these are the 5 sections. And let me quickly, yes, thank you so much, Karima. You read my mind. So section number 1, skilling, a lever to attract the talent that stays. So there were top 3 L&D priorities that bubbled up. And this was, again, by way of interviewing all the experts you saw on that slide. So again, there's a great focus, a great desire to provide career pathways and not just, a linear trajectory. There's emphasis on internal mobility. So there's this craving for more from the employees as well as from the organization. Then make learning inclusive and accessible. So, I had this interview with, one of the leaders from the Middle East, and they have a great women's program. They're like, we really want our women population, our workforce also to come and be a part of, all the learning that we are imparting. So they had customized the learning to that workforce too. Then embedding work-life balance in the learning strategy. So very interesting part. One question that I want you to think about is, does your L&D team have similar priorities today or the near future? So food for thought on this slide for all of you who are watching our webinar. Okay, next slide. Let's look at the next section. So enabling the new world of learning for a distributed workforce. Again, you and I are right now, in a distributed workforce. Like I'm not there. I support Disprz remotely. I'm doing that right now. I'm able to do this because, there has been a shift. Now, what are some of the insights that we got vis-a-vis the distributed workforce learning? So there was, a shift from laptop and desktop-based learning to app-based learning, and I really loved it, because all of us have our app stores full of apps, and here's an app for learning. So that was very, very fulfilling to see. So there's a greater craving for this, and then you see that there's again a hunger for aggregating bite-sized content because again there's so much. And a very important point that came up was that in a distributed workforce, how do you make sure that you are providing consistent and unified learning experience to every employee. Again, a very huge challenge. And in the ebook, you will see there's a gentleman by the name of Gurdeep. He's from Titan. He was amazing at handling a strategy to provide a unified learning experience. So please watch that for more. And of course, last question that I want to leave you with on this slide. Do you have learning champions in your organization? Do you have people other than the L&D team that's actually helping you take your L&D strategy forward? Are they partnering you, to really spread the learning in the organization and create a culture of learning? Let's move forward and see section number 3. So again, very quickly, getting the skills gap strategy right. Again, skills are huge these days. Why? Because, it's a very dynamic business environment. It's not like today, the job that I'm in, I will not have to reinvent my skills. I need upskilling. I need to reskill because the business is such. So there was a huge focus on this. But again, business and L&D goals should be aligned. That really came up very, very prominently. Creating learning experiences and not just schedules that people just go and get an intervention and come back. Do you really have a journey chalked out? Then L&D today needs to focus on skills and not just job roles. What does that mean? That your job might change, but you need to keep upgrading your skills. Okay, let's move forward and look at section number 4. I'm also going to club it with the last section because they touch upon the same thing. So L&D team. Now, the lucky last is really on the L&D team. Does the L&D team of today in any organization have the skills to support its business? And if you could move to the next slide, Garma, because 4 and 5 are really, clubbing together. So over here, you'll see that these are the top 7 skills that I'd really like you to think about. Does your L&D team have today? So we got this from LinkedIn Learning, and these are for you to assess your L&D team and see where does each member stand on. Now, unfortunately, in this LinkedIn report, we found out that L&D teams score really low on technology. So we need to be tech savvy ourselves to be able to, facilitate learning in the organization through technology. So I'd really love for you to think about this and do this assessment with your teams. Now, again, the last slide that I'm going to leave you with after this is really this infographic. We love this one. We created with a lot of love and affection for you all. So please, if you want to take a snapshot, a screenshot, you can. So this really summarizes what are those top skills that L&D team needs today. So I'm going to speak about 1 or 2 over here. For example, can you act as a consultant to facilitate meaningful conversations with your stakeholders to achieve business goals? And then also, are you adopting a systems thinking? What does it mean? Are you just programmatic, or are you really looking at the whole organization in a holistic way with a 50,000 bird's eye view to see how are you going to touch and anchor your programs in the entire organization in a very systematic way with right partnership and sponsorship? So I'm going to leave you with this, and with this I have tried to summarize a very big document into like 7 minutes or 10 minutes. If you have any questions, please reach out to us, and I hope you've got some golden nuggets from this one today. Thank you. I think I'm supposed to invite Ravi. Would you come back and help us move the webinar forward? Or Garima, either of you?
I'll take over from now. Thank you so much, Sunita. Thank you so much for your insights. Really wonderful slides there. I mean, it's very again, it's a very useful kind of ebook for everyone to take a look at and go through what we discussed here today in more detail. But moving on to now kind of the discussion portion of our webinar today. So once again, I'd like to invite Mr. Andrew Walhuter from Rotana Hotel Management and Rajiv Raghavan from Rivoli. So we're going to start the discussions with something very interesting here. Sunita mentioned the pulse survey that we did for the War for Talent ebook, and it turns out that actually more than half of the respondents of the survey said that reinventing the L&D team with skills to drive business value was quite a challenge, right? So there was another study that then concluded that, especially today, it highlighted how L&D managers really need to be more digital savvy in order to drive digital learning. But we'll start with you, Andrew. How are you approaching that in your organization?
I think it's a great question. Thank you so much, Ali. When it comes to learning and development leaders and the whole digitalization thing, something that we were thinking about previously was we hear about digital learning and it's trying to get your learning digital and make it accessible to all sorts of different people. But I think one of the biggest parts is learning and development, understanding how the other systems in the business are working. So it's if you're working with your commercial team and you've got a marketing department, a sales department, and a revenue department, it's important that you know what systems they're using and how they can make the best of their systems. It's getting a seat at the table with everybody that is making the decisions in the business. And it's not just about making your learning digital. Learning does, though, there was a point that I wrote down during Sunita while she was talking. And it's about upskilling and reskilling. And she touched very briefly on the LinkedIn Learning report that she pulled information from. And I attended a really interesting lecture a couple of weeks ago where it was very clear that in order to remain agile as an organization, your learning and development leaders really their learning needs to be greater or equal to the rate of change in the business. Now, if you think of rate and change, it's happening on a daily basis, and a digital learning platform or digital learning allows you to keep that agility, but it shouldn't just stop within learning and development. It's all about learning and development using that system to maintain that proactive response with the little infographic that was shared at the end of there, maintaining that proactive approach to the whole consultative piece of learning and development. Many times I see learning and development leaders fall back into okay, you've come to me with a problem. This is my learning and development directory or my catalog of learning. Here, have a look and see what may fit up to 80% for your team. And it's a one size fits all. And I think, with staying with all of the systems and the digital learning that we have, it's important that it's an experience for everybody, and that was touched on in the report as well. What do you think, Rajiv?
Yep, I think I resonate very much with you, and especially Ali, just going through the presentation, what Sunita shared. The numbers are like, it's not a surprise. It's pretty much clear the way in which the region operates, and I'm pretty much sure how Middle East as a region approached the situation, because Middle East as a region, if you see over the last 10 years, or even before that, it's been driven, this department is driven traditionally with a way of delivering classroom training sessions. And the throughput initially when we started with before 2010 or early 2010, it's all about the number of hours that has been spent, number of hours the person has been trained. It's more throughput driven. Over a period of time, eventually after this and the last few years, especially during the pandemic and after pandemic, this approach of throughput, number of training hours, number of sessions being conducted, all these have gone. Now business is very specific. They're willing to invest, they're willing to spend at this tough times, but not at the cost of just getting the numbers in place. They really want the hardcore business numbers to move on. So when it is coming to upskilling the whole organization's learning and development strategy, whether it is the knowledge of the learning and development person available in the group or the whole learning method, it matters a lot when it is coming to the business results. So it is extremely important, as Andrew rightly mentioned, we understand what the business needs and then follow the path. And then upskilling is important, and not necessarily as an L&D team need to wait for a digital learning environment to get into the ecosystem. You could actually prepare by yourself even before it is getting ready. So in my case, I took almost a couple of years to get the digital learning platform into the organization. And it was not that easy, and change is always, resistant. So we can always be prepared. You don't need to wait for the organization to get on. And that's where the L&D talent development is extremely important. And we could approach that in many sources today. We don't need to really think, there's an investment around it and people need to get on. No, I think today open source platform for learning is immense. And even before your organization is ready to invest on, you definitely can upskill your teams and your capability to make it as an important part of your life way forward as far as the organization and the culture of L&D moves. So yes, have a long way as we speak to go ahead. But yes, the path is quite clear and we can easily adopt.
Right, those are excellent points. I completely agree. I mean, like you said here, especially in the Middle East, it's kind of hard to kind of get away from that stigma of, okay, yes, we do need to upskill our employees, but there's a stigma around e-learning and digitalizing everything that makes it a bit more difficult to really move things ahead. But excellent points. Thank you guys so much for your insights. There was also another question that kind of went out asking for responses with this, where it said that addressing talking about addressing the skilling needs of distributed workforces, right? So more than a third of the respondents of the survey said that that's a big challenge. How do we actually distribute it across the whole workforce, because it's very diverse? So again, obviously, both of your organizations have different workforces across the board. So how would you be approaching that, for example, with your remote employees or with your frontline employees? What's your kind of take on business outcome-based skilling?
Okay, should I take on that, Andrew?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. Yes, you're right, Ali. And I think, what Middle East is known for, first and foremost, industry is retail. And I think I come from retail, and the distributed workforce, as you rightly mentioned, is all across the regions. It becomes extremely challenging for a learning and development team to meet the business expectations just by delivering the number of sessions. Say, for example, if you consider UAE as a region and all other regions, probably there'll be n number of training programs and sessions being planned, and it is always the 1/4 of the training that has been conducted in other regions, say like Bahrain, Oman, or Qatar. And what is expected is these people out there, the distributed workforce, is to expected to deliver the same set of skill set, upgrade their knowledge, upskilling, and there's no gap which is expected out of their performance, both in terms of business and customer experience. We come from retail, so customer experience is the prime most important. So anything that we drive should result in the numbers, that probably the sale number should go high, or the customer experience or the satisfaction score should go high. So absolutely, it is important that we get on. So that's where a digital learning platform, after we join, I can't say that we have come long way. It is just the first year, but there is a significant improvement in the way that we can approach by giving this content, by giving these micro modules, by giving just-in-time learning. We were quickly able to make these elements reach to the respective regions, and they all consume at the same time, because the consistency expected by the business geographically wherever we are present is important. We can't be lower standards in any region for our customers, right? So it is important, and we are approaching well through this. And to touch upon the previous point, yes, it's not just about that, as Andrew mentioned, we must also follow the blended approach. Just by giving a nuggets or a digital learning platform into the organization, easy accessible to everyone, may not alone resolve the issue. There should be a person who has been skilled in the region, in the respective places, to take care on. Has they been implemented on the job? Where there the checks and balance and the process has been in place to review whether these learnings have been implemented. And time to time, we also need to change the content as and when required, because the challenges in every region is different. One size doesn't fit all. So those measures are always considered. And I think as a business, we look into it, since the distribution of workforce is all across, and we really get into it in a very serious manner. And we are working, and that's where digital learning do help us to a great extent.
Great. I'll jump in over there. I think one of the things that I want to highlight when it comes to a question like this is the whole remote working thing is nothing new to us. It didn't just come up from 2020 when we were all forced and locked down. It happened previously. It's been in our lives for ages, where you would have a meeting with people that are around you, and then when you need to and it's scheduled, you'll have that global meeting where everybody hops on a call. So the whole remote thing is not new. And in saying that, I'd like to take a step back and go, before you start looking at the skilling requirements of your remote workforce, as well as your workforce that are based in the office, I think the first question that you need to ask as a learning and development person, or as a leader that's on the call today, is how are you connecting? How are you connecting with your teams? Because if you don't have that genuine connection that's based off of the trust and relationship and reputation of the people that you have around you, you can't expect people to upskill if they don't trust you, or you have a great relationship with how you are connecting and navigating those relationships. So in saying that, I think, you know, I've lost my train of thought for a second there. The skilling requirement, that's what I wanted to say. So yes, you know, building on that relationship that you have with people, and then finding out, we're talking quite broadly over here of upskilling and reskilling and upskilling and reskilling. Even if you focus in or zone in on the digital learning skills, what skills do you want people to learn? And when you truly look at the digital skills, there are many different pillars under digitalization, from transformation, implementation, adoption, all sorts of different things. What are the skills that you want people to learn? And I think I heard something the other day that I love sharing, and it's not about changing the whole approach to how we look at learning, it's transforming it. When you look at change, change is, yeah, everything I've known up until this point is changing, which means everything that I've known is now being left behind, and it's no longer relevant and it's no longer valid. And for some people, it's tough to let that go. Whereas if you look at transformation, what you're doing is you are honoring what used to be and bringing that with you into what the digital future really looks like. So getting back to the question, I think what's really important is to highlight, how are you connecting with your teams? How intentional are you getting with the skills that need to be learned? But also in that same breath, with connection of your teams, how are you finding out? Because not everybody is going to want to learn the exact same thing. What have you done outside of the digital learning in terms of psychometric assessments, for example, to see what are the strengths and capabilities of your team members and assigning the skills training accordingly? Because then you can play to people's strengths. And when somebody's doing something that gives them energy and that they really enjoy, what tends to happen is they excel at it because they've got that neural circuitry that's already there. So connecting your team, building those relationships, finding out what people want to learn, and then using your digital learning platform as a mechanism to assign learning, and also making sure, I know we speak about micro learning and blended learning, but from an accessibility standpoint, what are you doing to make sure that that learning is in the flow of work? And even for businesses out there that don't have a learning management system or a learning experience platform at the moment, if you're using Microsoft Teams, you most likely have access to Microsoft Viva Learning. That is in the flow of work. Microsoft Teams can be your launch pad to so many different applications. And I think it's important that learning and development people step out of their ecosystem, where we get so stuck in one business where this is how we do L&D here, this is how it's being done, this is what we intend on doing for this business. But as a learning and development person, when you step out of your ecosystem, learning and development and digitalization and digital learning is something that occurs in every single business. But every single business does it differently, and every single business has best practices. You are not going to get it right on your own. It's important that you step out and you ask those questions and you hop on calls like we're having today.
Great, excellent points. I mean, you mentioned something about also like bringing everyone to the table and making sure that everyone who you're trying to upskill and reskill has a say, and they want to keep learning, they want to keep engaged with your with your L&D strategies. And that actually brings us perfectly into the next question, because we had an interview with a wonderful human being, Arti Srivastava. She's the CHRO of Capgemini, and she said that actually they use learning as a employee value proposition, right? So this comes to something that kind of minimizes the impact of great resignation and preparing for the great attraction that we talk in the ebook. So basically, a lot of leaders were interviewed about this as well, and they said that they invest in democratizing learning, so making it accessible at any time, anywhere, for everyone, right? But are you? We'll start with you, Andrew. So are you considering this for your workforce? And I mean, how are you? Yeah, so digitalizing everything, making it as democratized as possible. Obviously, you spoke about it a little bit. But I mean, how are you addressing the attrition issues when it comes to your organization?
I think one of the most important parts is what we need to sort of understand where we are right now is when everything came to a grinding halt in 2020, the pace at which we were going was really, really fast, right? And we all of a sudden came to a really grinding halt in 2020. And now, as far as I'm concerned, we're going even faster than what we were in 2019, but we've only had 2 years to get to this pace. So a lot of people are sort of getting caught up in the eye of the storm of, I've got to learn so much so quickly, and all of a sudden become really overwhelmed with what it is that they need to do. And that's where learning and development people can step in and really use a digital learning platform to create or address those attrition issues. One of the things that we are looking towards in a digital learning platform is creating a talent marketplace. When people are overwhelmed with all of the information and the overload that is out there, all of a sudden you don't even take one step. You just stay where you are because there's just so much. Where do I start? So a digital learning platform at the core or foundation should have your learning pathways or your learning journeys. I think that goes without saying, really. But then the learning pathways and the learning journeys, and not to mix them up with development plans, can tend to go on for a short amount of time, up to, I've seen development plans go up to about 2 years. But what's happening in my future, particularly for a company who I work in hospitality. So, we monitor the attrition at obviously every single level, but the most important thing that we're trying to address is, what do you have to look forward to in your future? It's not just the learning that's happening right now. We're not just starting you off with the foundation that you need right now, but we're looking at, okay, these are the opportunities that will come up for you in the future, and creating this talent marketplace. And by talent marketplace, what I want to do with a learning experience platform is create a space where I have business leaders in various business units located across the region, across the globe, okay? I want them to, if they have a position that becomes available in one of their business units or one of their properties, I want them to be able to go onto a learning experience platform or any form of digital learning and go, these are the skills that I'm looking for in this position. These are the competencies that this person needs to meet. Based on the information that this business leader would put into a system, it aggregates all of the information that is out there and goes, hey, based on the learning that has taken place on this platform and all of the learning being mapped to skills and competencies, these are people that are eligible to apply for this position. So what you're immediately doing there is you're taking a global population of thousands and thousands and thousands of people, and you're really just bringing it into connecting through the touch of a button, right? And a learning experience platform, a digital learning platform, whatever you want to call it, should be able to create a space that allows for that.
Thank you so much, Andrew. And Rajiv, what about you? How do you deal with those issues at your organization? I mean, I'd love to hear insight as well.
I think it's a day in and day out, and especially, and Andrew really touch upon 2020, the pressing period, and even pressing period after 2020. That's how we look. I just thought of sharing you this, and I was recently looking for a change in the vehicle that I'm using. I'm looking for a car, and I went to the market and I'm researching, especially the long weekend helped me to research more, and I really identify. And we all know it pretty much. It's a seller's market right now. If you go to any dealers right now, you know what? Hi, that really liked it. Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, how much? 6 months. Okay, 8 months. Oh, sorry, it's going to take a year. A new model might come, but you may not. You may get access in 2024, right? Not even 2023. And I'm talking this exactly what happened over the last 4 or 5 days. So it's more of a seller's market, and kind of service that we're talking about is, like, if you want, you buy, wait for it, fine. Dude, we don't have any other choice. You go to the second-hand sales car market, you still find at the same price of what being said. So it's absolutely that level. Why I'm saying this now, considering that into our context of people at the frontline employees, I'm very specific to retail, the diverse distributed population. It is more of an employees market today. They have opportunities, they are scattered, and they can choose, and the options are plenty. Market is, irrespective of whatever happens, market is growing and retail is growing. So in order to attract the talent and retain the talent, it is extremely important. We definitely show some value addition. And this is the only time that you all understand and you accept with me, there's almost 3 to 4 generation of workforce working together, right? a head of a business unit might be a Gen X, Gen Y, and we have Gen Z's, a lot of people right now coming. So their requirement, the way they look at approach in terms of what would engage me, what would excite me, why would I continue to stay in the organization depends on various factors. So this understanding with us at the business level, at the HR and the L&D is extremely important, right? And specific to retail, any time that we are taking out the store personnel, they're doing a hardcore job of 8 to 10 hours in the floor. So we are now giving up, pushing a learning, self-learning, the digital learning, everything looks quite tech savvy and the way it is currently are. We expect that people would open the way when there is a new series has been announced, the way quickly they go and use the Netflix, Amazon Prime, because it's a push driven, you have all got that intents to get on the next series and the season watch back after. But that's exactly the same butterflies in the bellies when I launch a learning management platform. It's not going to work that way unless your intention is very clear, the content has been in place, and it is quite engaging for the people to go open up your app every now and then or the time that you have set for. So the engagement is extremely important, that we, in terms of retaining a talent because of a learning and development issue or a concern is arising, is extremely important. It is not just about the digital training, but the way in which we give opportunities for them to be connected, stay, and show the growth pattern. Yes, anytime, anywhere, any device. That's a topic, the word that we all use. It's extremely important. How do we use it? How do you mobilize that? And how the content has been created so that it is easily consumable for them to apply. And I have seen quite a few people who had walked in and given feedback about the positives, how it could be better and we can take, and why would they want to continue working in the organization. Sorry. So especially when the learning and development is as a clear progress and path for the next 6 months and 1 year, I would love to continue because there's a clear growth in the learning that I see, and that's where I wanted to. So it's extremely important we understand the needs, customize as per the learner, and then get on with it in order for them to be retained, because employee retention is going to be, or is it currently, and the challenge which I also foresee in future in 2023 and 24, especially in Middle East and in retail segment, and we need to work on.
Excellent points. Excellent points. I completely agree with you. And we did also mention before regarding again with kind of having delivered all of the trainings, and a lot of companies here having delivered that through classrooms or through in person. But you're absolutely right about keeping everyone engaged in all these different types of learning as well. But so when it comes to again the kind of the way that all of this is delivered to the employees. So a lot of leaders have been saying that, blended learning is actually the best learning format. So when it comes to blended learning, it means that, it can be confined to classrooms. It has to be a mix of everything, whether it's the in-person training, desktops, laptops, even learning on your mobile. So a lot of the frontline workforce needs to be able to access their companies' learning development strategy on their phones, because the majority of the time that's what they have access to. But well, again, starting with you, Rajiv, how are you doing that in your organization? How are you actually delivering your learning programs? Is there any kind of innovative techniques or technology you've been adopting to ensure higher engagement?
Yeah, definitely. As just to continue with the previous, I thought I would mention this. Gone are those days really wherein an 8 hours of session or a complete full days of training session would keep the participant completely engaged. There is a lot of opportunities today for them to be disengaged, both professional and at a personal level. And gone are those days wherein we at internally development, learning and development team start and putting and preparing contents for month together and build a training program based on that. The deliveries have been one. There's been a significant impact in the way the digital usage in everyone's life, in our lives today, as the amount of increase in the screen time that has gone really high. So it's extremely difficult for us, and especially as an L&D professionals, facilitators, coaches, mentors, that we develop these skill set with other people and find it extremely difficult to retain more than a couple of hours. So having said that, it is important when there is a business pressing need to develop a leadership skill. Of course, we do deliver. There is a lot of simulation. There is a lot of activities required to be in the classroom, team building exercises, and then they move on. It is important. But we need to ensure that, when they go out, when they carry, what are those tools and techniques that they carry, and they are able to apply. That's where the intervention of digital learning comes in place. Hey, you went through a formal instructor-led training sessions. Now that you're in the real world, you need to access, and these are the problems and the challenges that we currently face as a business and for people, your people as a team leader. How do we now mobilize? So we give a content time to time, just in time, and then give a reversal, and then we go and check, and then we develop our in-store trainers. We try to get on, understand the talent, the people. We change a bit of the KPI. Initially we worked that way, and we are not able to sustain. Now we are going to work on such way that we have a KPI is being slightly changed, so that he or she is motivated to take the role and challenge, and then give their snippet size models. Otherwise, again, either it is a classroom session in the past or a digital learning in the future, it's going to be an administrative task only for an L&D department to drive completion. And that's not going to make or bring any difference unless the business or the team members outside the L&D fraternity, who is in the business, who owns that learning is a part of my job responsibility to develop my staff out there. And I think, that's how I see, and that's how we are practicing, and we are finding a change. Of course, it's not significant. It will take time. It is taking time. And I think we are growing or going in the right direction.
That's great. That's great. And Andrew, I imagine as well at Rotana Hotel Management, of course, it's all across the board from, the corporate management side all the way down to, operations and people on the ground. So what kind of like innovative techniques have you guys been coming up with to address these issues?
Well, I think there's a number of, I'll take two approaches to answer this question. One is a classroom based and one is a digital based. And I think one of the things that I learned really early on in my L&D career was you have to prime and market. It's not just about the delivery of the program, whether it's blended, micro, follow-up, whatever. You have to prime and you have to market to the same acumen that a marketing senior manager would be able to market a product, right? And I think that's where we fall short as learning and development people, where we design such beautiful programs. And I've worked with learning and development people, and I work with learning and development people that have all sorts of qualifications and certifications, and we've got a number of this wealth of knowledge around us, and we put it into beautiful programs, but the pre and post is where we fall flat, where we don't market it, we don't prime people about the learning that's going to take place. And just sort of bring forward from something that I mentioned earlier about, around the attrition and giving people something to look forward to, is when you prime and when you market effectively as learning and development, what you're telling people is, hey, this is not just a once-off thing. This is something that's going to be continuous for a couple of months, over a year, over 2 years. And this is the outcome and the expectation that we have for you to enroll in that, and the expectation that we have for when you walk away from something like this. So when it comes to delivering those learning programs, I think it's not just about the delivery, and the delivery generally from an L&D person is always going to be highly energized. It's going to be loads of fun, but it's how are you getting people interested and keeping them there? And I'm talking about little things like when you're marketing something, are you doing a countdown to it? Are you creating a bit of mystery around it? People that I've noticed when, particularly from moving out of the pandemic, is people want to be affiliated with some form of learning, and creating a platform, creating a business, and marketing yourself or placing your position as a business in the market as a place of development is really what's going to set you aside and be able to attract and retain those colleagues. So marketing yourself so that people go, hey, I've been trained and I've spent a couple of years at company X, and they're known globally as development. Any other company would be silly not to pick this person up after, whether they're applying or whether they've been headhunted. So yes, delivery of programs, how we get a little bit innovative around there, I think, is the marketing and the priming around there. The digital approach that I want to take, I tend to be going back to the whole foundation thing the whole time. So I'm going to take a step back for this question too when it comes to the digital approach. But I think understanding your end user is so important. And it's not about just, again, creating those learning journeys. It's all about even the psychology of the layout of an application? Where is your OK button? Is it on the right-hand side or is it on the left-hand side? What about for users that are reading right to left or left to right? How are you creating an experience that draws people in and allowing them for that layout to make the best or the most out of a platform? Also, what I want to highlight is please do not be one of those learning and development people that thinks a digital learning platform is going to be your silver bullet. It is not your silver bullet. Okay, it's great that you have a platform that learning is in the power of everybody. And I've worked with LMSs, I've worked with LXPs, I've worked with gamification previously, and they're all fantastic. But what tends to happen is a business takes them on, finds them, invests, makes a really big bang and a launch, and then it sort of just dies a really, really slow death. Do not give up everything all at once just because you want to draw people in. What's really important in keeping people engaged and delivering the learning is that it's structured. People know what's coming, people know what to expect, and people have something to look forward to. As human beings, if you think about it, I've always got something that I've got planned that I'm excited about. It keeps me engaged, it keeps me energized, and it keeps me motivated in my role. And the same should be said about learning. How am I being developed? What can I tell my friends? What can I tell my family? What is the community that I now am able to affiliate myself to because I took part in this course or this online course? I've got a certification from eCornell or from Harvard University or wherever. And that's how you keep your people engaged when delivering learning programs.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Can I add, I'm just taking cue from what Andrew mentioned, especially on the first point, marketing. And I think that's extremely important. And the way I have learned out here, and it's right now working for me. Initially, when we drive internally from R and from an L&D perspective, still the program or the whole element is considered as an initiative from a learning and development team. It's okay, fine. Now it comes from a training program. Hi, there's a journey and they need to go on pre, during, post, all these things. But then when I eventually started probably in 2022, what had worked for me, I had started making the head of my business as a sponsor. What you're sponsoring the program. And the first email or the invitation goes from, why is this program important in your life as a retailer today? And that significantly gives them a solid extent. Okay, fine, it comes from the head of my business. And this is the transformation. So that message must be absolutely clear. And then creating an action plan, if that's a kind of program that you're running for, and that has been followed up by their own head of operations or head of that particular department, and there is a time period given, and it has been finally approved and signed off so that they are able to see back and check the measure before and after. So the moment the ownership had been shifted, I think he is the sponsor of the program, and that's where very clearly my Rossi matrix states, and when they fit in the platform, in the chart, it makes a big difference. And I think at least in this year, it really worked for me. And I think, that's one definitely a strong tip, be a partner with your business and make them as a sponsor and make them in the front. We play from behind, and then we get on facilitation, coordinate everything that we could do. And then we make them, what, this is what the business head wants. This is what the business requires. And I think the results are pretty much better and higher than what we drive when we're doing alone. I thought I'd add that from what Andrew mentioned.
I love that, actually. Yeah, give them the sponsorship, give them the ownership of their own learning. That's excellent. And I believe actually Priscilla Adams in the chat had a question for Andrew, which was answered during that, which was how you'd be able to prime and market the learning programs to your organization. So thank you both so much. We do have a few questions in the chat. So if you guys are okay with it, I'd like to go through these and see what we can address just very quickly. The first one came from Abu Ali Wasim. So it's a question to Mr. Rajiv. What have you done 2 years ahead of time to put your organization in a digital learning mode? And what's the ROI from that?
Okay, so I took a couple of years of time to ensure that this is an important project that would actually help my business. So the shortlisting of the platform is when we took a lot of time. One, we were preparing because that's exactly the time when a pandemic had hit, and we have just started resuming after the whole gaga, which went all through the region, probably across the globe. And then that's the first time, where people have been taking their Zoom license for their first time, or a Microsoft Teams that is existing in the world for the first time, correct? So this is when most of people who got realized know that there is a transformation, and I think I have no other choice. So this is the time when the shortlisting and hunting and all these things happen. And finally, we decided to go on with the platform, and we chose the platform and we got into it. So it is typically this year is where the implementation happened. The challenges were, yes, why would I need this? I mean, as a business, no, why would I need? How is going to make my people life different in terms of, and how different the output it's going to be? We were always okay for them to attend a classroom session. It's just during the pandemic. Pandemic has gone. Now they can come back to your training rooms. That's when the model clearly shows in terms of how much of an expenses or the budget's being spent for people traveling from an Abu Dhabi to a Dubai for attending a training session, for a knowledge examination where people used to come and do in a classroom environment, monitored, they used to come and attend. The time and the productivity loss, because it is crime in simple terms in retail to take the time out of a retail store. He is or she is there meant for the customers. Any time outside that must have a significant return on investment, or if the time 4 hours he's spending out and coming to a training session, right? So when we calculated all this for the kind of learning, not all the learnings are transformed. It's a very limited transformation happen so far because it is effectively a 6 months journey that we have gone through. But the amount and the time has been spent by the resources from there to here, that it's a huge difference, whereas it has met the expectation for what the person have to go and deliver, expected to deliver in the shop floor. I'll just summarize with one simple example. Onboarding has been, has always been the most important training induction in the organization that I'm currently in. So the onboarding program initially has only to do with a classroom session. So now quite a few of it, whichever we were able to digitize, we have digitized that. So the amount of time the new joiner comes in different regions and spend time here and do the learning, and then the kind of implementation that he does has got no difference in terms of his learning and implementation as we move from a digital learning perspective. So currently, that's the level of limited conversation that we look into an ROA perspective. When it is coming to the business enhancements, say probably this had actually improved the average transaction value or the sales numbers. I think we still have to go ahead with it. It's just in time. People are getting used to this culture, and it will take a little more time to get on with it.
Thank you so much, Rajiv. Thank you. Another question from Mr. Walid Ibrahim, and I believe we did touch on this as well, but Andrew, I'd like to give you a chance just to summarize it in one sentence. So what are the best strategies for having people engaged and committed to completing their learning paths on a digital platform? This is always a challenge.
Great question. I worked with gamification previously in one of the previous companies that I worked in, and that was something that was that had to be addressed really quickly. I joined the business and participation rates were really dropping quite quickly. Again, it's getting clear. So when you're building your learning and development strategy, what is your marketing activation strategy? And I keep going back to marketing, I know, but remember, with marketing, you've got the brands that you love. With marketing, it's a feeling. You are selling a feeling, and the feeling of I've just learned something, the feeling of I've just accomplished something, is that hit of dopamine. It makes anybody want to learn. So when it comes to participation rate, build your L&D strategy, but build your activation strategy as well. And like I said previously, the best advice that I can give over here is don't deliver everything all at once and just make it all available so that you've got a silver bullet that's going to go. Your content is going to get saturated really quickly. Your different departments should be getting different content. And just being really clear on activation. So are you activating something every month? Are you activating something every quarter? Or are you activating something twice a year? One thing that I also found that really works well is allowing the learner to displace their knowledge set. So instead of just doing a quiz or something where they have to submit after they have completed a micro-learning or a blended learning session, is doing a self-assessment firsthand of, okay, so this is the course that you're going into at the moment, customer service. How would you rate your customer service based on these 7 skills? And you rate yourself from 1 to 10. Then you actually do the customer service course, you do the quiz, and you can see, oh, I might have rated myself way too high for my customer service knowledge as opposed to what it really is. That is no intervention from a learning and development person needed. That is immediately somebody going, ooh, I want to be that ideal person in the future. I need to close that gap. I need to really work on that displacement of my knowledge set. And then you can use that as metrics when you start building reports around that with people going, look how much effort this person is putting into learning, not just about the hours, but they're going back, they're scoring high on their quizzes, they're really engaged in a leaderboard, or they're really engaged in the learning community, they're sharing more about outside articles and videos as opposed to just, oh, hey, I completed this learning. So there are really a million ways that you can engage people and keep people participating in an experience, in any form of digital learning or gamification. It's that accessibility, it's that marketing, it's the activation, and it's slow and steady. A digital learning platform is a marathon. It is not a race to get everybody through code of conduct within 2 weeks of putting that onto the platform. So just be mindful of that.
Excellent points, Andrew. And I think also the ownership part of it, as Mr. Rajiv had mentioned before, is quite important for that. Another question from Abu Ali Wasim is for both gentlemen. What's the average completion training rate per employee per year in your experience?
I'll jump on that really quickly. The thing with that's a really broad question, Abu Ali. I would love to say, yeah, this is the metric that we're going to use, but I've got people that work in food and beverage, and I have people that work in marketing, and I have people that work in revenue and all sorts of different departments. We've got it all in the hospitality industry. And somebody that's at a manager level might be a little bit different to the learning that's expected of them, as opposed to where somebody who is at an entry level into a business needs to learn. So I think what you need to get really intentional about is, what is the outcome? Work backwards. What is the outcome that you want from that particular role in your business? And what is the learning that needs to take place? Considering that, yeah, it's great when people take their learning platforms and take their learning outside of work, but there should be an element of that learning is provided and accounted for during work as well. And that's when you can understand, okay, so I've got a lot of learning for somebody that needs, that's starting as a financial controller. They probably need to go through a lot more learning than somebody that's starting as a waiter. What is that learning? How long is it? Who is providing it? And what does success look like? Paint done for me, and then work backwards.
That's an excellent point. That's great. And finally, we have a question for Mr. Rajiv. So how can we implement digital learning to technical teams in manufacturing industry when it comes to learning about equipment, for example?
Okay. I think I'm not prepared with that question because I've not been in that industry. But just on one part, which I can test, where in one part of my business also carry optometry as a function, which is again quite technical, that has got a lot to do with equipment. So that's where, we're in first of its kind in Middle East, we have launched something called a Vision Academy, and the whole objective of the academy is to ensure that the optometrists are the one who test your eyes when you go to your retail outlet. You have ophthalmologist as a doctor, just to give a context for everyone else in the room. So the optometrist will have to go through. And here, when they come to Middle East, being hired from different regions, there are quite a few equipments which are quite few and not familiar with it, right? So that's where, as an induction program, they do spend a couple of weeks out there in this academy, wherein we have done a complete simulation of a store environment in the academy. So right from the POS, how do you make an order? How do you book a glasses? Everything they would go trial, test, use the equipment. And we say that this is a comprehensive eye test that they make. And these are the 20 steps. They need to touch and feel and learn that equipment. And I think in terms of anything to do those hard skills, it is a must. It won't be easily replaceable. So what are we doing in terms of, how do we ensure now that further goes? We do a knowledge check. And we do then keep engaged in terms of time to time when the product upgrades are coming, where the brand principles are quite strong in terms of feeding us information, right? So those updates are important, but they always remain strong coming to a academy environment, a classroom, and touch and feel those equipments builder. So it will only act as another addition to give them a reminder and then know importance of it. Their knowledge is up to date. I think that's how I
As
see it. It's
well.
pretty much.
I just wanted to add on something, and I'm just watching the comments that are coming through in the chat as well. So I used to be cabin crew, and I flew for 13 years, and we obviously work with incredible pieces of equipment known as aircraft, right? And you've got to know how to arm a door and evacuate an aircraft in 90 seconds. And just going on some of the answers over here, simulations, after simulation, after simulation, after simulation, particularly when it comes to equipment. But how you can link your digital learning to that is through your Scorum or your XAPI content that goes on there. So before I stepped into a simulation where they would simulate cabin oxygen loss or a fire on board an aircraft or anything like that, what would happen is I would go through a course where I'm able to interact with the objects and the equipment first. And then by the time I step into the simulator, we're not wasting time on a familiarization session. Yasser was saying AR, augmented reality, I think that's what he's referring to. It's also a good tool. I've had the opportunity to experience virtual reality. We didn't use it for equipment, but we used it in a feedback session. The system was called Body Swaps. I recommend everybody tries to hop on Body Swaps or reach out to a virtual reality, something that does VR. It is the most incredible experience where you're giving feedback with somebody, you're giving feedback to somebody, and because everything's being recorded, all of a sudden you are on the outside watching your avatar that is mimicking everything that you're doing, providing feedback. And I did that about 8 or 9 months ago. I still remember that experience. So simulations, absolutely. Link it with your Scorum and your XAPI content as a primer. And then the system, what is the name of the system again? It is Body Swaps and VR.
Great, thank you so much. That is quite interesting. We've seen so many different applications of VR and AR in all types of business, whether it comes to learning or feedback. Or there was one company that does it specifically for team building exercises, specifically for C-suites and executives, and it's quite innovative, and it's really interesting to see. But ultimately, I think it's perfect time to kind of thank everyone for being here. So once again, Andrew and Rajiv, thank you so much for your insights today. I think everyone learned a lot from both of your experiences and what you had to offer. And I want to also thank everyone for joining our webinar today. It's such a pleasure to see so many people here and the engagement that we've had as well. I'd like to remind everyone that the ebook is free. It's available. Garima, if we can post a link for that in the chat, please, that would be great. But once again, thank you all so much for being here. If there's nothing else, I think we can wrap it up. Would anyone like to add anything before we leave? Garima, Ravi?
I think we're good. The link will be sent to everyone, and a short survey form will be sent to everyone who's attended. And for those of you who've missed, we'll be sending the recording of this webinar soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Garima. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Andrew and Rajiv. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful day ahead.
Thank you so much.
You
Take
too, Ali.
care.
Thank you very much. You've been a wonderful host. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.